Well, welcome to this Friday afternoon video communique again from my office for this Friday, May 22nd. I trust that you are doing well this afternoon wherever you may find yourself today. It was on Monday that we commemorated the 40th anniversary of the eruption of Mount St. Helens, which took place on May 18th, 1980. I don't know if you remember where you were on that day, but I remember where I was. I was, if I do my math right, I was 20 years old, and I was on a youth young adult retreat at a camp just outside of Hope. And I don't know when exactly I heard it that morning, but coming home I got all the television footage of what was truly a spectacular event. I saw some of the images again over these past few days, and I was reminded just in terms of how astounding the power of that eruption was. It was, I don't know how many megatons of TNT they said it was, the force of that explosion that blew, a third of the top of the mountain off. You know, when I think about things like that and remember back, and those kind of anniversary dates come along with respect to many kind of historical events, if we look at and remember those kinds of things, I sometimes like to think of it in terms of God revealing something about himself to man through nature. And the situation of Mount St. Helens, the majestic power of God is truly visible. The God who created the whole universe, an explosion of Mount St. Helens would be just something insignificant in the palm of his hand, but it truly does illustrate for us just how powerful God is. Marcella and I watched a movie a few weeks ago, which was the story, based on a true story of an Australian family who survived the 2014 tsunami while vacationing in Thailand. And the opening scene is dramatic in terms of the power of the water that came in and went for kilometers inland. And the devastation of that again reminded me of the power of the created order. Not to suggest that there's some specific reason that God does these things or that these natural disasters happen. Jesus reminds us, both in the story of the fall of the Tower of Siloam that killed a number of people, as well as the incident of the man being born blind, where he said this isn't necessarily related to some specific sin. That's for sure. But it does cause us to reflect and to evaluate a little bit about who God is when we see those magnificent natural occurrences take place. It is truly astounding, and it causes me to reflect. I suggest the same is true in the pandemic we now are experiencing with respect to COVID-19. That's part of the world in which we live today, but again, the dramatic effect of what can take place in creation around us. And I know that we live in a fallen world, and this is a part of it, but yet it does, again, as with the natural events of things like Mount St. Helens and the great tsunami in Southeast Asia, it does have the effect of stopping us in our tracks. And with respect to COVID-19, it reminds us, and has reminded me often, that life is uncertain. You just don't know. We can plan for tomorrow. We can try to decide what direction we think things should go, and put events into our planners and into our timetables. But at the end of the day, we are not we are not as in control as we think we are. I think that's why we are told, or that is why we are told, that we shouldn't say today and tomorrow we will do this and we will do that, but we should say, if the Lord wills, we will do this and we will do that. Because ultimately, we aren't in control. God is. And again, that doesn't mean that he's doing specific things for specific reasons because of something that we have done. But in the general sense, I think a lot of the things that take place in some of these big dramatic events that take place in life should be and can be seen as wake-up calls. That we are to be reminded that this isn't forever. God is powerful. And one day we will be given an account, and we are not as controlled with respect to what is taking place around us as we think we are. It was C.S. Lewis who said, tragedy can be God's megaphone. And the question that I ask myself and as I ask you this afternoon is, when these things happen, and even with COVID-19 around us, are we listening? Is God perhaps saying something, not always so specifically, but generally in terms of maybe things that we need to learn or things that we need to be reminded of? And yet, having said all that, I do remind us of Romans 8:28, where it says that no matter what is taking place around us, whether it's the explosions of volcanoes or the tsunamis or pandemics of viruses, that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. And that as we see the grandeur, the spectacular power, and and even the uncertainty of life, that we know that God is still behind that. And in all of it, he is working his perfect plan and his perfect will, both in the world and in our lives. Thanks for watching this afternoon. May you have a really splendid weekend. We'll see you next week.